So I'm just subscribing to OnlyFans, where Angela Rayner's porn star son can be found fornicating with his missus, Angela Rayner's daughter-in-law. Not that the sins of the son or the son's wife can be visited upon her, of course. It's just my biggest laugh of the election campaign so far, and there have not been many of those. I entered Parliament on the same day, almost 40 years ago, and at exactly the same age to the day, I think, as Diane Abbott. She was the first black woman MP in British history, having been the only working class black woman graduate from Cambridge in the 1970s. First British black, that is. She was an iconic figure back then. I've never been particularly her friend, but I have always been her comrade. I have always been on the same side as her, in the same lobbies as her, on the great issues of the day, over nearly 40 years. Just imagine that. Diane Abbott has been lynched. I say that with some trepidation. She has been lynched by her own party leader, Keir Starmer, who deliberately humiliated her, according to my old friend and Tony Blair staffer, John McTernan. The entire process was intended to, and did, humiliate her. It dragged her through the dirt. She wrote a common or garden letter to a newspaper in which she compared the experience of being visibly black with prejudice and discrimination suffered by other minority groups. Every word that she wrote was true. Whether or not she was well advised to write it is open to question. But nothing that she said was false. She apologized for it. She took an anti-Semitism awareness course online, via the internet. I would have advised her against doing any such thing. There was no justification for it. She was a senior member of Parliament, an iconic figure in the black population of Britain, millions strong, almost all of them voting Labour. She should not have done it. She should have stood upon her dignity and refused. But she did it. One assumes she did it because she intended to stand for a final 5-year term in the British Parliament, as indeed I am doing myself. But it didn't work. In a deliberately leaked to the Times newspaper, Rupert Murdoch's finest fur coat, but no knickers, brigade. I'm back to OnlyFans again. They leaked that whilst she was going to be restored to the whip and be a Labour MP again, she would not be permitted to stand in the upcoming general election for the constituency that she has served for 37 years and enjoys a parliamentary majority of more than 30,000. That's the majority of more than 30,000. They want to get rid of her and put up somebody else in her stead. I say this, Diane, as a long-time comrade of yours. Enough is enough. Stop ameliorating an offence that you never committed. Stop seeking to make concessions to people who have deliberately humiliated and degraded you. I have seen in the last 90-odd days that I have been in the House of Commons just how damaging their conduct has been to you. You're better than that. I urge you to tell them to stick their Labour whip where the sun don't shine and stand up as an independent candidate in your constituency where you'll be elected by a landslide majority, because you stand for peace, you stand for justice, you stand for equality. Keir Starmer stands for none of those things. It would be degrading to you to be a Labour candidate in the upcoming general election. Ditto Lloyd Russell Moyle, who this evening was axed as a Labour MP in Brighton, Kemptown. Other so-called socialist campaign group members will be axed before you get to the starting line. That's why I gave you all a deadline of the end of May. Resign from Labour by the end of May. And we will not be taking any Labour defectors after the end of May. I was right. Once again, Keir Starmer intends to completely destroy the remaining fabric, such as it is, of Labourism within his changed Labour Party, or as he puts it, my Labour Party. So it's his Labour Party that we are determined to destroy. It's not the Labour Party of Tony Benn. It's not even the Labour Party of Dennis Healey, the former beachmaster at Anzio, Chancellor, Defence Minister. It's not the Labour Party even of Roy Jenkins. It's not the Labour Party of Harold Wilson or James Callaghan, still less of Barbara Castle or Anthony Wedgwood Benn. This is a mutation. This is an ugly mutant that has been captured and forever by one of the worst and least effective politician ever to command a British political party at a time of great crisis in our nation. This man is a liar, he's a cheat, he's a deceiver, and he's a warmonger, and he's a racist, and he is 10 other epithets that I could apply. But the most important one, we have to make sure he is a loser. He already thought it was done and dusted. That's why he and his hirelings have engaged in all these conspiratorial moves against people like Diane Abbott and Russell Moyle. They thought that the election was in the bag, but it is not. The once apparently unassailable Labour lead in the opinion polls has now shrunk to 12 percentage points, and it will shrink still further. The race will tighten because Sunak is actually a better performer than Keir Starmer, and that will be seen in the televised debates from which they have entirely excluded me and excluded the Scottish National Party, excluded all of the other parties, even though we are running to be Prime Minister in this election too, but that's what passes for democracy in Britain. But he may come to regret having just him and little Rishi Sunak on the stage, because assuming the stage and the podium is lowered well enough, Sunak will perform better than Starmer. Starmer's lies are tumbling out, being found out day after day after day. It is a chastening experience, no doubt, for people who were already drunk on a power which was not yet theirs. So we are standing at this moment more than 200 candidates. I'm speaking in High Wycombe on Friday evening at 6 o'clock at the Guildhall in the High Street in High Wycombe. I'm speaking outside the Ashton Town Hall in Greater Manchester, where we're trying to unseat the aforementioned deputy leader of the Labour Party, Angela Rayner. I'm speaking on Saturday evening in my own constituency of Rochdale. I'm speaking on Sunday afternoon to launch the campaign of my colleague, the Honourable Craig Murray, the former British ambassador and a man that any sane country would have as their foreign secretary, unless that job was mine. We are off and running. And all over the country, people like Jeremy Corbyn and Andrew Feinstein and other independents are taking the fight to the Uni Party on the basis that there is no lesser of two evil amongst them, and that we will no longer let evil win. We cannot identify which is the lesser of two evils. Although I have my own theory, you've heard me adumbrate many times, I think that Keir Starmer is far more evil than Rishi Sunak will ever be. I believe that Labour has to be replaced, has to be removed and replaced by a party more fitting of the name. It's been one hell of a week, and I mean hell of a week in Gaza. We thought we'd seen the worst. We thought we'd seen it all. Now that 100% of the 2.3 million Palestinians trapped in that cage are displaced people. They were already displaced. They were already refugees. Virtually none of them come from Gaza. They were already displaced people in their own country for 75 years in some cases. Now they've been displaced again and again and again. They have cascaded around the 25-mile of the Gaza Strip to one safe area after another, only to discover that a safe area is not safe in the Gaza Strip, that those areas that Israel told people to relocate to was merely a precursor to raining down savage death and destruction upon them. Seeing all those buildings destroyed and turned into rubble was bad enough. Seeing the children, women, men trapped under that rubble, their arms, their hands, their feet, their legs sticking out from under the stones was bad enough. But when you are raining down 2,000-pound American bombs built by Boeing, don't you know? Their bombs are rather more successful at what they do than their airplanes currently are. Boeing built the bombs, and Joe Biden gave them to Netanyahu. And Netanyahu rained them down on people in tents. I don't know why, but for me that's even worse, even lower than everything that we've seen so far, not least because when the bomb explodes, if indeed it was intended to fall on any specific tent rather than another, the fire then spreads through all the tents. It cannot be extinguished. There's no fire brigade. Those burned and mutilated cannot be taken to hospital, for there are no longer any hospitals. They cannot be assisted from outside because no aid is coming in from outside. Israel has seized the border itself in defiance of the Camp David Accords, another international law that they are absolutely, flagrantly breaking. There's no way in, there's no way out. Your tent, or the tent down from you, has just been set on fire by an Israeli bomb. And your mother, your father, your son, your daughter, your sister, your brother, your aunt, your gran are literally scorching, burning to a crisp inside those burning tents. You look around, you find a child without a head. I've seen it. We won't show it, but I've seen it. And you can see it too if you don't believe me. Unlike the atrocity, pornography, not on OnlyFans, but on the mainstream media that you were told existed on October 7th, but were never allowed to see for the simple reason it was a complete fabrication. But this you may well have seen. Children without heads, children with no legs, children with no arms, children burned to a crisp. The murder, mutilation, and mayhem that rained down on Rafah this week did not cross Joe Biden's red lines. That's what his spokesman, Kirby, the striker, the Der Stürmer of this disgusting chapter of human history, told the world. Distressing, no doubt. A ghastly mistake, said Netanyahu, even though his ghouls had been out defending it all day, only to discover that their leader now says it was a ghastly mistake. The horror of what happened this week leaves me with only one question, really. How can any Western politician continue to support this, continue to arm this, continue to fund this, continue to give diplomatic and political and media cover to this? How? And how will it be possible for any politician in the British general election from the parties that have supported this massacre, this genocide from the outset, how will they be able to persuade anybody at all to vote for them? Coming up after this short break is the Honourable Craig Murray, our good colleague, but also a parliamentary candidate in the Blackburn constituency, and we'll be speaking to him about both things. Stay tuned.